Hello and welcome to this Project in a Box video. This is part 4 of our series looking at Method Manager. And in this session we're going to move on from talking about the basic navigation to talking about info panels, which drop content of properties through onto display on our diagrams. So let's go and have a look at that. We're of course in the now familiar Method Manager, and this is part of the work that we portray onto the images. So we're going to come and get our diagram of example here, and we can see where we left off last time that we had maps which included a navigation instruction, the action and the value, but they can also then have an info panel set up for them. So normal ones don't have an info panel, they just have the navigation. Some can have both, so this one here has a navigation action, go and open the project properties form if you click on it, but actually also show an info panel which shows the contents of the description for the project in that space as well. So it's a dual purpose one. And others can be just displaying content. They don't have a click action, so there's no action here, but they do have an info panel, which in this case is showing the plan percentage complete as a piece of text. So these info panels allow you to create things on their own or to jump off the back of existing maps that are there already. So let's go and have a look at a couple of examples. Let's start with this one up here. So in our map diagram you can see we've got a number of other boxes showing in here, and these are the boxes with the sizes according to the other bits of data that we can show. We've got the overall location, which is 350 by 19, and it's a 577 long by 27 high. That's our overall area, and our info panel elements must fit within that area. If they're not fitting within that area and they are active, they're ticked on, then it will cause an error, a message you'll get. You're not allowed to save the format in that situation. You have to have them inside of the area. So this one has an info panel switched on. The most important thing is which property are we dealing with here. You can only deal with one property for each info panel. So we come to text and we can see this is project display name. This is the name the system sends out, which is the name of the project. And you might want to use that. In this case, we're going to use that up here in the project header diagram. So we've got this panel that we're working on, 577 by 27. We can see that up here as well. And in the Advanced tab, we could choose to show a background for it. We could set a background color and transparency if we wanted to, and that would automatically be for the whole area. And also we can choose to set a border if we want to, and a border color and transparency and size, etc. if we want to do that. We're not going to do that in this particular circumstance, but if you do want to do that, you can switch those things on. Then for our property, we can also have a title. This will be static text. You'll determine what you want that title to be and where you want it to appear. So this is this longer box here. So we could have a title which said project name, and then we could have our name appearing after it further over in this space. This isn't switched on because we're not going to bother with that. We're just going to give the name. It should in most cases be pretty obvious that that's the name of a project. So we don't need a title here, but you can use a title if you want to. And this is the size and location is referring to relative to this overall panel. So it's 5 by 5 inside, so if we made it 1 by 1 inside and maybe much shorter so we could see it, apply those changes, we see that moves to there. It's now active. It's using we can see what that information is going to look like. We'd be able to bold it if we wanted to, like that. We could align it if we wanted to, like that. And you see it reflects the changes that we're making. This is, if you like, a preview that allows us to see how we're laying all that out, how it's going to appear to the users. We're not going to use this one in this particular case, but this allows us to see how those things work, and we can say switch them all on if we want to do that. What we are doing here is using a display of the text for the project display name. Now again, if we want to preview what that's going to look like, we can use some sample text. This isn't what will actually appear, but it allows us to see how it looks within here. So we can put in example project name like that, and we can see that we're using the right color that's going to match our diagram, that it's going to be about the right sort of size and font and boldness, and the alignment is going to be how we want it to be, etc., to make that look just right for the project. I'm going to come back and switch title off. Now we don't really want that anymore. So you see how we can use that space, and that'll support really quite a long project name. Most of them won't need to be as long as that. And we could, if we want to, center align that so that it was always going to be in the middle of the space, or left align it as we've got here. So that's quite a common use, to just display the text straight up. And in fact, if we come and look at these ones here, they're doing exactly the same sort of thing. So in fact, an exact match would be here. So here we've got the project sponsor, the name of the project sponsor, that's appearing in that space there. We've got it obviously much smaller in this case, and we're going to show it black rather than in the orange to match the header layout. And that's going to be very similar for the project manager. Now once we get to these ones over here, these are more data-y. So this is using the plan percentage complete. It's going to be the percentage complete for the plan, so it might be something like 25%, something like that, so we can see what that's going to look like. Say the other things are present, but we're not using them. We're not bothering with titles here or anything about the panel. What we're interested in is just seeing that figure. So it's quite large, but it's just going to fit nicely within that space just there, and it might even in fact not be a percentage, it might be 25.0 like that. So, pretty straightforward to set up, as long as you know what the property name is. So you need to be using the right property name for the piece of data that you want, and then it's always going to be that value for the currently selected project, which is why it's different, displaying on each project its own custom information. We can obviously move that round within the space as we need to, and then we've also got the ability to take the properties and display them in some other interesting way as RAG images. So let's have a look at one of those. So over here we've got a display of the plan task status. This can be set up in Planner to determine whether the plan is green, amber or red. We're not showing the text for it, we're not showing its actual number, so what we're doing here instead is showing a RAG image. You could show both the text and a RAG image if you wanted to do that, but here we're just going to show the RAG image, and we are defining how that RAG image is going to look. It's going to be 4:4 in 2020 in size. It's going to have its own border on it, which just helps it stand out from the background. And it's going to have a small border which isn't transparent, and it's silver. So that's fairly obvious again how you use this thing. But then the colours that actually get used in the real situation, the real application of this onto a live project, are determined by the value map here. So we're able to set up a value map which has, in this case, 3 different input conditions which are matched on text. So if the text is red, then the output value is going to be red. Fairly straightforward. If the text is amber, we're going to show an amber icon, and if it's green, we're going to show a green icon. If we had completed here, which we do, so if we go and have a look at this one, for example, this is doing the same thing. It's using status, project status, and it's again showing a 20 by 20 icon, but this has some further entries to it. It also has a completed, not started, on track, exception. So you match these to the values that might be sent by the project. So obviously these work really well for text match against pick lists. That could be a particular department, a status, a month, all sorts of things. And so you match them against the pick list entries, and it will colour accordingly. But you can also set these up to run against a number range. So let's have a look at an example of that. Not in this diagram, but if we come to the dynamic diagram here, you'll see here we've got something that's showing us the number of overdue tasks. So this is using two of those elements. It's showing me the text for the number of overdue tasks in black in size 12. In this case it's black on an automatically default black background, but if we were to change that to be white, just so that we can see it here, and the example was 6. Okay, we would normally expect to see that. It must be a layering thing, but we see it in the output. We'll go and have a look at the output in the real project in a minute. But we've got the number displaying here in the middle, and then we've also got the RAG image, and the RAG image is displaying based on the number map. So in this case, if the range is between 0 and 1, we get a green background. So if we've only got no overdue tasks, it's green. If we've got between 1 and 6, it's yellow. If we've got more than 6 and less than 1 million, it's red. So it chooses how to display that colour based on the range instead. So we've got that matching done that way instead, and we can see some of that showing us there that's outside the range. So I'm just going to cancel that for a moment, and then we'll come and have a look at that, how that looks in the real example. So here you see we've got 0 overdue tasks, so we've got 0 on the green background because it's 0. If we had any more of that than that, then obviously we would have a yellow or a red background. And that's the same with my open issues and my open risks. I'm using the same approach here, but I'm obviously running it on a different property. And so when we come back to Method Manager, we would have built the first one here, and then we would have used duplicate map, because we don't want, this map is it's quite a complicated thing to set up. Got to get it all right, and we don't necessarily want to have to do it 3 times from scratch. So we can create the first one, copy it, and in the second one we'll just simply come in and change the property value and change the ranges, perhaps, if we want to change the ranges. So this one uses a different range, 0 to 6, 6 to 11, 11 to 1 million. So those are the things that we can do with an info panel. We can show text, we can show icons or RAG type blocks. We can also background that and give it a border, and show titles for that information, and we can get some really quite sophisticated displays of that data that we're going to use in the system, and they will work in the Windows application as well as the browser application. You can put them on sidebars if you want to. We've chosen not to do that. There's not much space in the sidebar. We'd like to keep it quite clean, but you can, if you want to, put these things operating in sidebars as well. So that's the info panel. It's about taking the data that you have for properties and putting it straight in front of the user's eye line. And obviously we normally have property information available in our project pick list, so for example here, but once you're into the project you want to be able to see that straight away, and so you can get that information displaying to you here. Of course, if there's nothing, you'll get a blank as we've got here, but otherwise you can see some of the things we've been talking about. Here's our project title showing through. And it's about obviously jiggling these things around to get them in the right position so that they look right, in the output. Okay, so that's talked about info panels. That was session 4. In session 5, we're going to pick up a range of other information that we need to wrap up and finish off our method template. Things like setting up the reporting structures and the properties and the permissions that we're going to use, and how to do some validation and checking to make sure that the method template is structured and working correctly. Okay, I hope you found that helpful, and if you need to ask any further questions, please do so.